Hi, I'm Old Sneelock. Welcome to another episode of Old Sneelock's Workshop. Well, I'm running out of time, running out of assets to cover the cost of undercoating, so I'm going to do what I can. I've got enough to spray the top rails with some phosphoric rust converter, and I'm going to do what I can to get the top plates, and then when I get a chance I'll try and do the bottom ones later. I just can't spend any more time on this job. I haven't mentioned it before, but there's a plethora of stupid ideas in the design of this frame. Making these point upward, these rails, that just creates a space for dirt to lodge and water to congregate. To the point where I've seen trucks on other channels that were totally rusted through and needed to be rebuilt by putting patch plates on everything to cover the holes. This isn't the best way to do it, it's just the way I have available to me. Will it stop the thing from rusting ever? No. Absolutely not. Will it give it another year or two? I hope so. The box beam design on the channels is supposed to make it stronger, but it actually traps water. I suppose in an Arizona climate it doesn't really matter much because it doesn't rain much. But out here in Michigan in the Midwest, we get water. And then the genius managers of our roads and highways put salt on everything. I'm trying to make sure I get all the weld areas coated more than anything else, because the welds are the weak points. Well, I'm actually pleased. That can went further than I expected it to. Now, I didn't get underneath the frame, but that's something I can get to without having the box on it. Trying to cut my time spent on this a little bit. Other duties. You just got so many other things you're trying to do during the day that I can't spend all my time on this. And I do need to have it running. I do need to have it so I can drive it on the road. So, next thing to do is clean out those cage bolts. I'll run a wire brush up inside the nuts and clean them out and make sure that they're going to accept the nut, because I don't want to have to fight getting them in like I fought getting them out. The cage nut here and down there aren't there anymore. I took those out with the drill motor. These little brass bore brushes, they're actually gun cleaning brushes, but they do a nice job on threaded holes too. These are old. You can tell by the shape and design of the box it's not blister packed. This is a number 3A bronze shotgun brush for a 410. It does a nice job on those nuts. Now let's hope that it stays. Interestingly enough, this box is used. Looks like whoever owned it took good care of them. Considering I've had that box a good 10 years and I've used it multiple times, but I only used the one brush because it's never worn out. It just keeps working. Now I'm not doing major stuff with trying to get rust off the truck frame with them or anything, but it does a great job doing what it's doing. Cleans out bolt holes. In 1999 I bought a Farmall B because I wanted a tractor that I could afford to work on. It was $500, which was probably more than it was worth. Actually, it was more than it was worth. I didn't know it at the time, but the engine block had been cracked and patched with Bondo. So when I got it home, I started taking it apart, and it was a miserable mess. You saw how I worked to get the bolts out of this thing because they were rusted. Imagine a tractor that had sat outside in the fence row for decades, and every bolt on it was stuck, including the engine. The engine was stuck. Got it running, and I drove it in the Union City Memorial Day and 4th of July parades every year. But one of the things that I did do is I bought a can of anti-seize. This is copper-based anti-seize. Great stuff. When you put this into a hole, it no longer rusts. So I'm going to put it in these cage nuts and spread it on the bolts themselves, and I should not ever have to monkey with it again. For one thing, I'm not going to take the box off unless I absolutely desperately have to. The other is, these bolts will come out. No worries. There. Well, this is the rust that I knocked off easily inside the shop. There's more out there on the ground. But I'm going to sweep this up so I don't keep cracking it everywhere, because I want to lay the truck bed down and get ready to put it on the back of the truck. The original old Sneelock's workshop was a hog barn over behind my house by Union City. When I bought the house, we did it on a handshake deal. I pretty much said, okay, I'm going to buy your house. We had stopped in and talked to John Dunks, great guy. And he had the house listed, and we walked around the yard. I went inside the huge barn. I had a sailboat. I had a 22-foot sailboat. And I had been leaving it outside with a tarp on it for the 4 years that I had the boat previous to buying the house over in Union City, by Union City. And I said to myself, that would be perfect to put the boat in. Plenty of room. The front room was 40 by 30. And the back rooms were smaller. But that front room I could tow the boat in with a truck, park it, throw a tarp on it, not worry about it ever again because it'd be safe from the rain, the weather, snow, hail, anything else. Then when we walked into the backyard and I saw the hog barn, I said, oh, that looks like a perfect workshop. Now, I was looking at it with rose-colored glasses. Because it was built in 1911, and that was 1991 when we looked at the house. No, 1990 when we looked at the house. So it's been around a long time. And it had hogs in it. Hogs are notoriously destructive. But there hadn't been a hog in it for 50 years. Side story. The reason that the property ended up being owned by the people who owned it is they were the granddaughter and the grandson-in-law of the original owner. Roy Klein. Roy Klein raised hogs. Up until the day that he had a heart attack while he was in the hog barn, the Klein family owned the farm before I did. The original owner and the first farmer on the property was Roy Barton Klein. Roy had a daughter, and when Roy passed, after the hog barn incident, when Roy passed, after the hog barn incident, his daughter, who was a teacher, moved into the house. Her and her husband. His name was Glessman. They went through and fixed up the house, did a whole lot of things, but they never did anything with the hog barn. Might have been something to do with not wanting to be around the building itself. It had rotted away. There never was a foundation on the building. It sat on cornerstones. So when I walked in and looked at it, I thought, well, it's going to take a lot of work, but this is my workshop. It's got a concrete floor. Okay, rose-colored glasses. The concrete floor had a lot of dirt on it. And I noticed that there was a pile of dirt in the middle of the room, and I thought, that's interesting. But I didn't do a whole lot. I was walking around looking at the house. I already made my mind up I was going to buy the house. So we bought the house, and I got us moved in and got everything straightened out, got all the stuff done with the house, put in the washing machine, had to run lines for it because they didn't have an automatic washing machine. They had a wringer washer and a concrete sink in the back room, twin tub concrete sink, and a washboard. Mrs. Glessman, Marjorie is her first name, was a very particular homeowner. She took care of everything. There was a story told to me by her daughter, and She said, Mom always took care of everything, made sure everything was working. She had a handyman come because there was a hinge on the barn that was squeaking. He went over with an oil can and oiled the hinge and said, there, it's all set. She said, no, you're going to take that hinge apart, you're going to sand the pin, you're going to clean the rust out of the inside of the hinge, and then you're going to grease it. That way it won't ever squeak. So that's what she did. That's what he did. And you could tell that about the house because everything worked. Everything in the house worked. And it had a 60 amp service. And you could tell that some things had not been as top of mind as others. The back of the barn needed siding bad. The front of the barn was all in good shape. Turns out that Mr. Glessman, who was a fire engineer, we just kind of gravitated to the place. He wanted to go through and put siding on the barn. So he started. And then there was some discussion about whether they were going to do the back of the barn. And I guess there was a confrontation. And the back of the barn was never sided or painted. So when we got everything all straightened away and I had the workshop done, I had gotten it to the point where I could work in it. It was cleaned up and was working. I said about putting siding on the back of the barn. We went and bought, they call it rail car siding, tongue and groove. And I bought, I don't know how many truckloads of this stuff. The wall that I was repairing was just about 20 foot wide and 35 feet high. Yeah, I was up on a ladder an awful lot. And the barn had been left with bad siding on the back wall so that the rain got through the siding. And I had to replace some of the frame. Because all it takes is a couple of nails to keep the siding hooked in place and replace the boards that go bad. And barns last a long, long, long time. I mean, there's houses in Europe that are thousands of years old. So, since they hadn't put the nails or the boards on, Ryan and I went through and replaced the frame pieces, and then we put up the siding and got it all done, and everything looked good, and it was great. So that was the story of the big barn. The hog barn, which I started this story about, the hog barn was, like I said, abandoned. So when I went in to clean it out, which I had to do a lot of cleaning, I had to shovel a lot of stuff out. The barn itself had to be lifted. I had to jack it up, and I built a foundation underneath the outside walls. It had concrete floor, but woodchucks had gotten into the concrete floor and dug underneath it. So it was unsupported in the center. And what the woodchucks did is they dug the dirt out of the hole and pushed it up so it set on top of the concrete floor. So here you had unsupported, weak, hand-poured, thin slab, maybe 2 inches thick, concrete over a big opening, and a woodchuck digging the dirt out. Well, the dirt kept falling down and the woodchuck kept digging it out, so the concrete gradually went down so it ended up at a 45-degree angle. Well, it stopped falling at that point, and the woodchuck was happy because he now had a hole. But I had a trench in the middle of the building that was about 4 foot deep. So I filled that with the dirt from the floor that was piled in there, filled it all up, leveled it off, went in there and poured concrete, 4-inch thick slabs by hand, 10 feet long, 4 foot wide. And I would go in and pour concrete after work. I'd do a section, then I'd do another section, then I'd do another section another day. Every day when I got home from work, if I had time, I would pour one section. Mixing it all, I had a cement mixer by that time, and I was pouring it out, leveling it out, troweling it out, and then said, okay, that's enough, one night. Took me about, I don't know, a month to get the building all poured. And the floor in the hog barn part, I had patched the missing spots. Filled the missing spots so that it wasn't level. It was kind of rippled. But it was a lot better than working on the ground. So that's the story of the hog barn and how Roy Barton Klein ended up passing. And I ended up with his hog barn as my workshop, the original old Sneelock's workshop. If you have any suggestions for new video, questions about today's video, or any of the other videos on the channel, just drop a note in the comments. You know I read them all. Thanks for watching.
This video is not to be viewed by anyone under the age of 13 in the U.S. or 16 in the European Union without the express written permission of the parents or the legal guardians of the underage person. Such written permission must be on file at the local government entity in charge of enforcing the rules and regulations established by the FTC. Anyone violating these terms is admitting by default that they hold harmless the owners and operators of this channel. Any and all questions should be addressed to your local branch of the FTC.